Very good morning to all. Let's begin with the first talk of the day. This talk is going to be more about security of cellular networks and modems, which are present in your smartphones, your cars, your IoT devices, drones, and whatnot. My name is Amit Vitekar. I'm a cybersecurity master's student at National College of Ireland. I have 2+ years of experience as a security researcher into hacking electric vehicle, IoT devices, embedded devices. My most focus is on security of cellular networks. I have worked on security of GSM, LTE, 5G somewhat. And most of my time I spent reverse engineering and exploiting embedded and IoT devices. I'm also interested of something, I have a special interest in occult science too. Okay, so what's this talk going to be about? First things first, we'll be looking at an overview of 4G LTE network to just get a basic understanding of how cellular networks work. Then we'll try to fit in how does a modem play an important role into communicating with cellular networks, and then we'll be talking about security features in the cellular modems. We'll also be looking at a case study of different vulnerabilities that I had reported, and then we'll talk about mitigation techniques that can be used by different vendors. Okay, so this is what a basic 4G network looks like. The UE is basically user equipment. We call it this a smartphone. This could be a smartphone. This could be your car, which is connected to a 4G network, let's say Tesla. Or it could be an IoT device. It could be a drone, which is connected to a cellular network. The ENB, which is basically a cellular tower, also known as Evolved Node Base. This is your cellular tower to which your smartphone communicates. This tower is connected to the MME. MME basically stands for Mobile Management Entity. This is where all the security stuff happens. All of your encryption keys are stored here, everything. And the ENB talks to the MME directly. These are mostly connected through fiber optics and various means. All of your IP packets are routed through S gateway. Okay, so most of whatever you're browsing, let's say you're browsing Facebook, everything, all of the data flows from S gateway. And the job of the PDN gateway or the P gateway is to allocate you IP as soon as you turn on your smartphone and your data. So PDN plays a very important role in all this. All of these things work interconnected with each other, right from your smartphone to your PDN gateway. That is how your data flows, and then you're able to browse the internet. So now the question arises, where do cellular modems fit in and why do we need them? So just like there are RFCs for various protocols, so for web and TCP IP and stuff, there's a consortium called ITU, International Telecom Union, and it has a different sister groups, I would say. One of them is 3GPP. So 3GPP is responsible for laying out technical specifications of how the network should be architected, how the architecture of the network should be, how they should be deployed, and how it should work. So specifically, when it comes to your smartphone vendors, your routers, your electric vehicles and whatnot, they have to follow the specification to design the modem chip and a firmware running on top of this chip, which is basically an RTOS with different tasks. It makes sure that all the AT commands which are being executed are being translated into different basically commands and being sent to the nearby cell phone tower over RF means. These chips are mainly available mostly found, I would say, in your smartphones, in your routers, and even your electric cars, drones, and whatnot. So our talk will be focusing mostly based on this chip. As I said, baseband firmware in cellular modem contains 3GPP specs, and it is implemented in form an RTOS. Also, sometimes it has been found it is available in the form of embedded Linux or open source Linux systems. So these are some of the security features that are being, are given by various vendors. What today I'll be talking mostly is about Quectel. Quectel is one of the biggest vendors in modem space and telecom space, and they use Qualcomm's architecture called as Hexagon. Hexagon has a very different architecture, a very different instruction set. Reverse engineering Hexagon chip is very difficult because they are not ARM based. They have a very different way of working and executing. So there are 4 protection techniques that are given by these different vendors. One of them is jamming detection. So if, let's say, you're traveling somewhere and you lose connectivity to your cellular network, basically your phone is offline, right? You cannot call anyone, you cannot use the internet or do anything. Now, this is in the case when you're roaming. Let's say there is some white noise or disturbance present in an RF spectrum. This causes the smartphone to get jammed, and there is jamming detection in these chips, specifically when they're used in electric cars, drones and stuff. In smartphone, Apple does provide protection from jamming, but I'm not aware about other vendors like Samsung and Oppo or something like that. The second protection technique or mechanism this vendors provide are pseudo-base-station attack protection, which is basically deploying a fake GSM or LTE network and forcing your smartphone or your device to connect to this fake cellular network. So again, depends on different smartphone vendors. Some of them provide protection, some of them don't. Then there is a private APN attack. So mostly in electric cars and drones, what you would find is that APNs used are very different from the APNs that you find in your smartphones or your IoT devices. They are not just that you create an APN, go to your settings, create an APN, type in the name of your APN, save it, and your data starts flowing through their network. That's not how it works. Usually they have a user password mechanism. But when I pen tested a couple of EVs in last 2 years, I haven't found any of the security mechanisms being used. And this is something has been advised by a lot of modem manufacturers, and it's even present into 3GPP specs that a username password combination should be used to authenticate let's say a car or fleet of cars to a cellular network. And the last thing we will be talking about is an AT command vulnerability attack. So this is basically a hardware and a firmware based attack, in which if you reverse engineer the modem, you find serial communication ports, let's say UART, Universal Asynchronous Real-Time Communication, serial wire interface, SWI, and once you get access to this, you access the internal firmware, or you try to dump the firmware, you reverse engineer the firmware, figure out what AT commands are being there, and then you try to manipulate these AT commands. So these are some of the protection techniques provided by vendors against these various attacks. So one by one, we'll be seeing how we can bypass this technique even if the protection mechanisms are available, and what measures should different OEMs take when it comes to protecting their devices from attacks, specifically to modems and cellular networks. Okay, so how is this going to be done? What is the lab setup and everything? So most of this stuff that I'll be talking about will be done in an isolated environment. You can consider a Faraday's cage, something like that, or a room which is isolated from external networks. We'll be using a software-defined radio. So all of those who don't know what's a software-defined radio, it's a radio in which you can listen to any frequency, or you can transmit at any frequency and stuff. So we'll be using USRP B200 for deploying our 4G network, which will act as a pseudo base station. We'll be using HackRF. Everybody knows HackRF. What is HackRF? It's pretty famous. We'll be using it for jamming the network. GPS spoofing, this mostly has been used when it comes to spoofing your apps like Uber and all this stuff, where you try to manipulate the destination that you're trying to reach, and sometimes you just get away with it. At zero cost, you can get a ride. And later on, we'll see how a USB to TTL converter can be used to just talk to the modem over UART or SWI interface. So let's begin. So to bypass the jamming detection, the first thing is that we need to figure out at what frequency is your smartphone or your target device communicating with a nearby cellular network. So this is called something called as EARFCN, EU Ultra Absolute Radio Frequency Channel Number. This is specified in the 3GPP specifications. You have to do some reconnaissance. You need to run your HackRF or USRP with your custom GNU Radio script and start listening to various GSM frequencies. If you stay in area, so let's say in India, we basically use frequencies around GSM of 900 megahertz. And that is where every region or every state in India has been allocated a specific ARFCN. And then you have to just look it up and try, is your device listening at this ARFCN? I have tested this and over a smartphone and even some other OT devices. Also, the target device, which was kind of a telematics unit, using jamming attack, I was completely able to disconnect it from the legitimate cellular network And in further attacks, we'll see how we can use jamming attack to force a device to disconnect from a legitimate network and connect it to a fake network and then get all the data traffic flowing. So this is an ERFCN calculator that you can find on Screamware. So let's say after reconnaissance, you find out the frequency. Your frequency is 2114. This is where you see a huge spike using a software-defined radio. You just go to this ERFCN calculator, type in the frequency, and you will get the ERFCN number. Or let's say you figure out an ERFCN number and just click on the frequency thing. This is available online. It's an online tool. You get to know the uplink and downlink. So 2114.20 and 1924.20, these are the frequencies which are basically being used by your device to communicate to the nearby cellular network. What you need to do next is to jam the downlink frequency. That's the tricky part. So this is the script that I had been using. Now this software over here on the left side, which shows some blocks interconnected and everything. This is GNU Radio. GNU Radio is an open source software based on Python and C++. You can use this to generate different waveforms, and you can transmit and receive data over the air and a lot of stuff. Especially if you're a communication student, this is a tool you should be playing with a lot using a cheap RTL SDR. After jamming, on the right side, as you can see, there's a symbol, that's a semicircle symbol, which shows that the frequency has been jammed, and some of the other slides, you can just slide it to various frequencies and increase the RF transmission power to lower or increase the power of jamming. Remember to not jam too much, as this could cause the device to be completely disconnected and go into a very different state where it will not even try to connect to any other cellular network and just remain idle. This is a kind of a security mechanism being provided by a lot of vendors, especially some of the very great Israeli vendors. I've seen this they are doing. It's a very great security mechanism. And it's a very nice way to, detect, someone's trying to hack your device over a cellular network. Just sit there, don't do anything. Let's wait. Let the hacker do his thing. We wait for half an hour, 45 minutes, nothing happens. Then we again try to connect to the legitimate network. That's the way it works. Okay, now this was the first attack. Now this jamming attack that I described, we'll be using this to deploy our pseudo base station attack. Why would I do this? Thing is, as soon as you power on your device, your smartphone, your IoT device, or even you start your car, it knows what frequencies are nearby being used by your cellular company, because this data has been transmitted by your telecom operator to your device, and it resides as a cache into your modem. So it directly will go and try to connect to those frequencies. Through jamming, we force it to disconnect to those frequencies once we understand what those frequencies or what those ERFCNs were. And then at the same frequency or frequency just at different offset, we deploy our fake network with all the fields like MCC, MNC, IMSI, TIMSI. So what are these fields? MCC stands for mobile country code. So when you're sniffing, you can come to know what is your mobile country code. Then MNC is your network code. So MNC is unique for each and every telecom operator. Let's say Vodafone has a different MNC, and then 3 has a different MNC, and somewhat. IMSI is your user's unique identity over a cellular network. It stands for International Mobile Subscriber Identity. So let's say you're going from Ireland to US, and let's say you're on Vodafone. So how do they recognize? You're from Ireland, or you're from Norway, or you're from India, or India. So IMSI is your unique identifier. It helps you recognize, this guy is coming from here. We need to provide him roaming services. We need to provide him data packs, data services, and so. When you're in your home country, so let's say I'm currently a subscriber of some telecom operator here in Ireland. So I have been assigned something called as TIMSI. So TIMSI helps the telecom operators to locate whether I'm going from Dublin to Cork to Galway, where am I exactly? Your telecom operator has a log of whatever you're doing, where you're roaming, what services you're using. So TIMSI comes into the play when you're in your home network or you're roaming in your own country, or let's say European Union. IMSI is global. Wherever you go, they know that you have gone there, you are there for so much time, because the telecom operators over there, they send data back to your main operator, and they're always talking to each other using SS7 or different protocols. Okay, so we deploy a pseudo fake cellular network using open source deployments like SRS LTE for 4G network. This is a very famous, or I would say one of the best deployments of available right now for 4G networks. And OpenBTS is old, it's now deprecated, there's no more maintenance going on, but it's still one of the best choice. You can also go for Osmocom. It's an amazing 2G implementation if you have a software defined radio. In case of 4G, now comes the big trick, the big hurdle in 4G networks. In 4G, we have something called as private keys. These private keys are basically used for mutual authentication. In GSM, in 2G and 2G networks, what used to be that, let's say you are a subscriber of a certain telecom operator, and you try to go into your settings, try to connect to a different operator. There was no mutual authentication. You could actually fool different operators to connect your device to their network. In 4G, this is not possible. In 4G, you have to share something like hashes of your private key to your telecom operator. Then that hash goes into the management entity, and those hashes are compared. Oh, this hash is present in my database. This guy belongs to my network. Let's give him access. If this does not happen, you won't be allowed to use any of the services. And in such situations, so let's say you are using a commercial mobile operator SIM card. These SIM cards are not going to get connected to your fake network because you don't have the private keys of those SIM cards, right? So what do? Well, GSM does not use mutual authentication, right? We just force the device to switch back to GSM and tell it, no 4G network is available here. Please switch back to GSM. It falls back to GSM. On GSM, there is no mutual authentication. The device connects to your fake network and starts sending data all the way. Or you can use a programmable SIM card. Sysmocom is one of the best vendors to do this. And after analyzing all these things and you're done with your entire setup, then you start jamming. And you keep on jamming, you're jamming until and unless the device gets connected to your fake network, and then it starts flowing the data. So this is my test bed that I had used, a laptop with Wireshark and my 4G network deployment, a smartphone for test purposes. This smartphone was basically used, this smartphone and the target device connects to the USRP. So that's the USRP, which runs your 4G network. The smartphone and the target device connects to your network. The reason why I use a smartphone alongside with my target device is because on smartphone, you can see different statistics of what data rate is being coming on, and what other characteristics of your pseudo network you are able to see. Because if you try to do the same over let's say an IoT device or an electric car, you won't be able to see all these things. A rooted smartphone with some amazing apps can give you a lot of information about this. So this is what you get once you start sniffing and once you deploy it and whatever messages you get. So over here, as you can see, the one which is highlighted, RRC connection setup complete, attach request, PDN connectivity request. So these are some of the initial steps that needs to be done in order to identify a device and connect. Just like we have TCP/IP handshake, there are some handshakes that need to be done in cellular networks, after which the identity is confirmed and then you're granted request. As you can see below, so authentication response, security mode command, and then cipher message begins. This happens at very later stage. Encryption begins at a very later stage. Before that, whatever basic communication happens, it's all in plain text. This was a big flaw in 4G. Using this flaw, you can easily study, at what frequency is a cellular network running? What is the base station ID? How you can even track users, how many users are connected to the specific cellular network or that specific cellular tower which is nearby in your vicinity. Those are very sophisticated attacks, and you need a lot of great radios to carry out such research. So below you can see here MCC is written India. The reason why I have masked this information, because this is all very crucial information and anyone can use this information to deploy the fake network. So that's the reason why I've masked. I don't want to get into any legal troubles. MCC is India. India has its own code. I had carried out this research work in Pune, a city based out in Maharashtra, Mumbai, India. Then you have an MNC. So MNC, what tells the network code? Which network are you in? That's what it is. And then it also tells the state. So where it says Maharashtra, so it's a state in India. Then you have MME group ID. So remember I said MME is the one who manages all of your authentication and integrity and cryptography stuff. Once you know your MME group ID, you can track users. Oh, this user belongs to this group ID. His encrypted key resides over there. And if you are able to break in physically in MME, you can get access to the private keys. Don't do that. Then you have MME code, and then you have TIMSI. So these are some of the very crucial information. And this is all available in plain text. You just need a RTL, SDR, and Wireshark. Just need to pipe it to Wireshark, and Wireshark will dissect these things for you. So once you get all this information and you study all of these messages one by one, now what attacks can you conduct using all of this information? Downgrade attacks, as I told you. Because in 4G, it's very difficult to force a device to get connected to your 4G network because of the hindrance of the private key not available. You just downgrade it. You just tell the device, hey, right now over here in this vicinity, there's no 4G network running. Please go back to GSM. And the device will be, yeah, sure. If there's no 4G available, I'll go back to GSM. But GSM has one issue. There's not enough bandwidth over GPRS and edge network. That's the big issue. So the second thing is, using the list of nearby ARFCNs or ARFCNs, I was able to perform a redirection attack. This is one of the most biggest flaw in 4G. This was revealed and it has been fixed in 5G networks now. So the thing is, using your pseudo base station network, you can tell a device, if he is trying to connect to your network, that you are not allowed to connect to me, but yes, I can give you access to my GSM network, and tell him the frequency of my GSM network. The device goes and connect to your GSM network. This is a huge flaw. This should not happen. I mean, you're tricking anyone, you're tricking users to connect to a fake cellular network. And this has been fixed now in 5G specifications. Then once the target device UE gets connected to your pseudo network, you can obtain all the IP packets, whatever data has been flowing back and through to the internet and your device and everything. Using this, you can do GPS spoofing if you know how to do that. Let's not get into that. That's not the topic right now. SMS spoofing, you can even manipulate the AT commands once you have access to the hardware, let's say. In next slides, we'll come to know how we can combine all of these attacks and create a very big supply chain attack and compromise the device completely. Okay, this is the data you will find in your fake network once the device gets connected and it has been fooled. Okay, so I have masked the IP addresses where it's connected to. Over here, you can see GPS log, vehicle info, sensitive credentials, blah, blah, blah. This all is a it's a packet data. This goes to the cloud. The IPs are hard-coded of the cloud into the device's firmware. You are just sitting in middle. It's a man-in-the-middle attack. A device talking to the cloud. You're sitting in middle. You're observing all the data. Okay. Now let's say over here there is latitude and longitude. You do a GPS spoofing attack on the device. You see the change in latitude and longitude here. Now, if this was in case of an electric vehicle, let's say you have an app which shows where your car is. Right now, it shows, it might show where you're connected to, and later on, it will change your location. You won't be able to figure out. Private APN attack. So, as I said, APN settings are present in your smartphones. These are pre-configured if you have a smartphone in electric vehicles and all these things. It needs to be configured. So when you buy a vehicle and all, these are pre-configured by your manufacturers. This is how, if you are using a 4G network, this is how you would set up a APN. So first you go to your settings of cellular network, scan for the network. In this case, the name is 90155. This was the name given to the network. Set up a private APN. So SRS LTE tells you to set up a private APN so that your data flows to the network very easily. Once you create this, you just need to put the name. Name is SRSLT. That's it. Nothing else. See here, username and password combination is given, but we don't need to use it. Okay. And this is in the case of smartphones. In cars and IoT devices, you need to have this combination. Otherwise, security is compromised. And this is the bandwidth I was getting on the after it was connected to my network. And the final vulnerability that we were talking about is the AT command. So cellular communication relies heavily on the baseband modem or the so-called baseband processors in the smartphones, and they are responsible for all the cellular communication that happens. Baseband modems are nothing but they execute AT commands, and make sure they are communicating through your antennas to the nearby cell phone tower. I was able to successfully been able to sniff the baseband communication from the target device and analyze the live communication between the device and the smartphone. I was able to acquire SMS and call information. I'll just show it how it was. Yeah, so this is how the attack is carried out. This is a USB to TTL converter. This is used to connect to the interface, SWI or UART interface of this device, and on your terminal or laptop, you get to you get all the information. If you want to know more about this, just go to Osmocom. They have explained great in depth. Once you have set up all these things, I have used a tool called QC Super. So this is basically a Python script, which once your hardware setup is complete, it interfaces your laptop and your target device and makes sure the communication is happening between them synchronously. And then you can see, and then you have to just pipe this data via Wireshark Live and decrypt the traffic. You have to pipe all this data to Wireshark. This is how you start getting the data from your smartphone baseband. Yeah, this was the thing. So these SMSs are usually encrypted. In this case, I was able to get, you can see here, 046014 is the OTP for transaction of this. This OTP is valid for 15 minutes from the request. Please do not share with anyone. Well, you just shared with me, so I know what the OTP is, and we were able to use this OTP to make another device subscribe to the service. Huge flaw. And why are we able to see this in plain text? Because we are logging everything from baseband. Remember, SMS is coming from your cellular tower to your smartphone. From your smartphone, it's going to your processor. Processor is decrypting it. We are reading those decrypted messages. No need of encryption. You don't deal with encryption at the hardware layer. Everything has been done for you from the application, your kernel and everything. You're reading directly from the chip. Okay, what are the mitigations? So along with jamming detection, I feel that vendors should also provide jamming prevention mechanisms. For pseudo-based station attack, it is advised to use a two-factor authentication. And for private APN attack, it is better to whitelist necessary IP and request made by any other IPs. So just only specific IP addresses the device will talk to. Also, one can ask the telecom operator to provide username password combo for APN configuration. This will improve your security. And in case of AT command vulnerability, it's better to disable serial communication ports or pinouts and execution of system level commands over serial ports, because sometimes modems give direct access to their Linux interface and you can just execute Linux commands and make system-wide changes. Questions? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Does the phone not then just step to another frequency?
It tries to. So in that case, you have to keep on jamming. That's what I say. You have to keep on jamming and jamming and jamming. At some point, it just stops looking for it. And then once you know what is the frequency the smartphone is likely to connect to, after jamming multiple frequencies, you just deploy your fake network at that frequency. It tries to go back to that and it's connected to your network. You don't need to do anything else. That's how you fool the modem. Anything else? Any other questions? Yep. Okay. So. Okay. Sure. So thanks a lot.